The story begins at Rokuhira Swordsmith, where the day starts under the warm sunshine for Kunishige and his son Chihiro. Kunishige is renowned as the most famous swordsmith in their country, crafting special katanas using his unique method. Chihiro diligently trains alongside his father every day. When Kunishige is at work, he's in serious mode, which stands in stark contrast to his usual self. Chihiro often finds it a bit odd, especially when Kunishige talks to the goldfish they keep, a quirky habit he picked up. One day, Kunishige returned home with some goldfish he had acquired from the sword polisher. Chihiro wasn't thrilled since he knew he'd end up taking care of them. The red goldfish was believed to bring good fortune, the black one warded off evil, and the three-colored one was simply said to be amazing. Handling his father's whims and responsibilities like this sometimes proved to be a handful for Chihiro. While the two were engrossed in their usual casual banter, a familiar face suddenly graced their gathering. Shiba, an old friend of Kunishige, popped in for a visit as he often did. Bringing along some souvenirs, he went into a discussion about the town's ongoing turmoil with Kunishige. In a playful manner, Shiba even sparked a light-hearted height comparison between himself and Chihiro. During this visit, Shiba spoke about Kunishige's fame during the Seidei War 15 years ago, where he was considered a hero, as the sword he forged played a crucial role in ending the war. Chihiro had heard this story countless times, along with constant comparisons between him and his father. After Shiba left, Kunishige shared a moment with his son, who had just turned 15, discussing Chihiro's aspiration to become a swordsmith. Kunishige led Chihiro to a room where a katana rested on an altar. It was one of the swords he had forged before Chihiro was born, a weapon used during war. As Kunishige held the katana, he reflected on how katanas, while tools for saving lives, could also be instruments of death. Swordsmiths bore responsibility for the consequences of the katanas they created. In one swift strike, he cut through a bamboo stand before the altar, emphasizing that katanas, in the wrong hands, could take innocent lives. Swordsmiths must always consider this. Kunishige asked Chihiro if he could shoulder the weight of producing and entrusting a katana to someone, knowing the impact it could have. Chihiro, although unsure, was committed to taking on this responsibility. After their talk, Kunishige told his son to get back to work. 38 months later, the Korigami, a Yakuza organization, is executing the elimination of a group of people associated with a particular movement. Among them was a lone victim, battered and bound. This victim shared how their once peaceful city had descended into chaos following the infiltration of the Korigami, who resorted to violence and seized control over both land and wealth. The Yakuza boss of this assassination group delivered a punch to the victim while insinuating that a higher power supported their actions. When the victim mentioned the possibility of sorcery being involved, a man wearing a cap, seated on a platform within the building, intervened. He found the victim's words intriguing, and unusual roots began to emerge near the victim's face. He asked the victim if he had ever encountered sorcery before. He emphasized that bravery often had its roots in ignorance, as spiky branches began to constrict the victim. Turning his attention to the Yakuza boss, the man in the cap stated that the method used was inconsequential as long as they received payment. Nevertheless, he expressed concerns about the Yakuza boss organization, particularly the upstarts. With a mysterious hand gesture, possibly hinting at a kind of sorcery, he vanished, while having some flames in his body. Chihiro was seated on a train heading to a certain city when Shiba approached him while eating some grilled fish. Chihiro mentioned they were supposed to meet at the station and couldn't help but wonder how he had never seen anyone casually eating grilled fish while walking around. Shiba offered to share some with Chihiro while taking a seat in front of him, but Chihiro declined. As Shiba continued to enjoy his grilled fish, he commented on the prominent scar on Chihiro's left upper face, suggesting that if he would heal it if he could. Chihiro explained that every morning, when he saw that scar in the mirror while washing his face, it served as a constant reminder of a specific day, filling him with fresh resentment and hatred each morning. Shiba pointed out that this long-standing grudge could potentially be harmful to Chihiro, prompting Chihiro to ask if Shiba intended to stop him. The two of them arrived in a city that Shiba introduced as one ruled by the Korigami Yakuza group. Chihiro inquired if the Yakuza had any connections to a certain group of individuals. Shiba admitted he wasn't entirely sure, but it was the only lead they had thus far. Chihiro suggested that they assess whether the Yakuza were reasonable individuals before engaging with them. Meanwhile, nearby residents were discussing the grim sight of several hanged bodies at the entrance of a huge torii gate. These bodies were associated with a group known as the Anti-Korigami movement, and it was clear that they met this gruesome fate for opposing the Korigami. Shiba noted how such gangs often used such displays as a warning to deter interference, implying that the group might be ruthless. Chihiro, visibly angered by the sight of the bodies, inquired about the location of the gang's base and requested that Shiba take him there. Outside the Korigami Yakuza base, some members of the group were casually seated, keeping watch at the entrance while discussing their readiness to eliminate anyone bold enough to intrude. In the midst of their conversation, a sword suddenly struck one of the Yakuza members, fatally slashing the person seated in front of him. This surprise attack was carried out by Shiba, who signaled to Chihiro that he would deal with this group of men. Chihiro, seemingly appearing out of nowhere, leaped onto the table of another group of Yakuza members. With an oddly polite apology for interrupting their conversation, he suddenly eliminated all of them. The victim remained on the ground, trapped by the Yakuza boss who had menacingly brought in his only family member, his younger sister, to the tense confrontation. This situation pushed the victim to shout in fear and ultimately concede, agreeing to share all the information he possessed. However, their conversation was abruptly interrupted when one of the men who had opened the entrance door was suddenly struck down, and another had his hand severed. This unexpected turn of events sent a shiver down the Yakuza boss' spine as he urgently inquired about the identity of the newcomer. He also raised concerns about the guards stationed outside, unaware that Shiba and Chihiro had already taken care of them a little earlier. In a somewhat playful retort to the boss' inquiry, Shiba called out that his men were indeed slacking off. He then informed one of the surviving guards outside that Chihiro was none other than the son of Kunishige, the renowned master swordsmith famous for his unique and unparalleled technique. As Chihiro entered the building, he expressed his intention to ask a question, while making it clear that he couldn't allow any of them to wield katanas. In response to it, the Yakuza boss promptly ordered his men to attack Chihiro. Meanwhile, Shiba, who remained outside, explained that Kunishige had infused Chihiro's katana with sorcery. This katana was unique and possessed special powers due to the enchanted blade used, crafted by Kunishige. Chihiro, now in a combat-ready stance, firmly gripped his katana and chanted the word in 10 as he drew the sword from its scabbard. This action summoned 2 goldfish spirits, their aura merging with the katana. It was the last katana crafted by his father, the one Kunishige had sacrificed his life to create. With a further incantation of Kuro, Chihiro swiftly and effortlessly defeated all the men in front of him, seemingly without even making contact with them using his sword. He then leaped into the air and delivered decisive strikes, concluding the lives of all his adversaries with the utterance of Nishiki. As Chihiro eliminated most of the men and Shiba joined him inside the building's hall, which now bore witness to a gruesome scene of human tomato juice and fallen Yakuza members. Chihiro spared the Yakuza boss momentarily to extract information about the Hishaku, a group of sorcerers who supported the Yakuza. Initially, the Yakuza boss feigned ignorance, but Chihiro's words and intense gaze soon wore down his pretense. Chihiro made it clear that the boss' subordinates had met their end, awaiting him in the afterlife. Meanwhile, Shiba assisted a victim by cutting the ties that bound him. In a trembling voice, the boss revealed that the Hishaku were no ordinary guys. They were monsters. Chihiro said if they are monsters, it didn't matter. He was prepared to cut them all regardless. This video ends here. I want to thank all those who support me, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then leave a like and share with your friends, and like always, subscribe and turn on the notification. Until next time, take care and stay safe.